And somebody asked, maybe I can also relate, if you just answer one more question
Sure.
about developing a good vibrato. And good vibrato means, in a sense, it's not just a tool, expressive tool. Of course, everyone has this. It's a, you know, part of our soul, which really suggests what kind of vibrato we need to use in some particular music. But in a technical aspect, because I personally feel that it's really what makes one good player into the more advanced player. It's a use of vibrato and how to use it in the most efficient way, like you do. You practically, no one sees how you vibrate, but there's so many overtone comes. So if you could share with us, maybe you remember how you were guided, or what did you take in order to develop this effortless, continued, beautiful, like you were talking about simplicity. I mean, it's easy to say, one needs to get to that point when it's simple. There's stages when it's not so simple. It's a final stage of our destination when it's simple and good, not simple is bad. So vibrato, I think it's one of the technical element for violinists, because so many they have great heart. They want to express so many emotions. So they start vibrating. Everything has so much tension. So how to learn to be absolutely relaxed and natural. So you don't force this vibrato. It comes as your breath.
Well, I mean, you're asking me all those questions are very difficult. They're not easy. They're not
I
easy.
know. I know.
There are no easy solutions, and so I do not want to put myself into trouble expressing something which will be only partially true. Vibrato, of course, just like everything else, like right hand technique. For example, right hand technique, I think, is not studied enough in schools, even today, not studied enough. I go every once in a while from one school to another, good schools, and my conclusion is that it's not studied enough, not studied with at the same degree as, for example, the left hand technique. Okay, and to me, a good player is the synchronization and the balance of both techniques. That would include, of course, on the left hand, violin playing is many components put together at the right time, at the right moment, at the right phrasing, at the right sequence. Um, yeah, I'll give you a great example. Both had incredible vibratos, beautiful vibratos. Oistrakh and Stern, but both conclusions, both are had different conclusions of vibrato. While we know how expressive or expressive Oistrakh was, Stern always had a tendency, thicker, bigger hand, not bigger than mine, to always slow down his vibrato at the very end. And it's a technique which is unique to him only.
Hmm.
They both are great vibratos. I mean, you listen to their best work, it's tremendous. Each one of them, you say, I don't know what is better. This is better. No, maybe this is, no, maybe this is better. They're, so to me, they're superlative people. Um, my point is simple. My point is that at a certain point, your experience working with vibrato becomes part of you. It infiltrates your personality, and you get to a point where you don't think of the vibrato speed or the vibrato width when you perform certain things. It becomes a natural part of your being, and then it becomes your individual vibrato. The best example that I can give is the difference between those two great artists. Each concluded in a different way. Great conclusions, both great conclusions. They were great friends too.
Yeah. But everyone, I mean, we cannot even compare in everyone. And you said about the bow technique, absolutely. Also, it's a way one would create a different kind of expression, like what Heifetz did and Isaac Stern, Menochi and Perelman. You and many great artists, they use a different tool. It's a different palette, how you call it. You choose different colors, and of course, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. With vibrato, I just find that it's a crucial point. Again, I repeat my thought in a more technical way. To develop a great vibrato, one needs to release all the tension, because if there's a tension, you cannot vibrate continuously. Because
Right.
only you can play one note at a time, beautiful note, but there's no continuation. So there's a finger and connection with the, like you were just demonstrating, you practically didn't move anything, but your wrist is absolutely free. And I think, in my humble opinion, this is a great tool to develop a continuous vibrato when without stops between the notes, when you can really sing through the line. And this really gives a lot of advantage to just to release the tension. For instance, when I would like to warm up, I don't play difficult virtuoso passages. I try to play a very expressive melody, maybe with double stops, but try to really connect every note so there's no break in terms of vibrato. And right away, you mentally connecting into the music and the line, and physically you have this kind of inner vibration which leads you through the line. So
Well, yes, you see, Professor, you arrived or you have spent more time in the Soviet Union than I did. Although I am quite familiar with the Russian school of playing. I had an uncle who was really quite a great violinist, who has taught me all the ingredients and the basics of the Russian school. And I was one of the luckier early artists who was able to combine both, combine West, Juilliard, with early went to France, early to Belgian, Franco-Belgian, and of course being Russian, etc. You, at the end of the day, you study all, and you adopt a style which is not only best to you, but it is a style that can adapt to any composer.
of course, it depends on the music. Vibrato is
Right.
related to the music we play, of course.
Sure. And eventually, the procedure of doing many the same works or changing works, etc., after rolling it over many times, you arrive at a point where you don't think about it. It's there to complement your work that you're doing, and and it becomes part of you, whether you study a new work or you play something that you're extremely familiar with that has very different view of some, I don't know, Mendelssohn concerto, etc. But I maybe I want to conclude with an amazing thing that I've seen once. Speaking of vibrato and speaking of how to warm up before a concert, I have seen once a very famous violinist, Gypsy, very famous. It will not be mentioned, but very famous.
We know him already, right?
No, you might not know him. You might not know him, but very famous, who has been, in order to warm up violin playing, yes, violin playing. And, gypsies, you know very well that they start playing something very quickly and a
Right.
lot of bowing and a lot, yeah. He was warming up, looking at the mirror with his voice. Oh, oh. I said, what are you doing? Can you please explain to me? He says, the inner will warm up, the outer will perform.